Now I've got the heads installed, and I know when I torque them down they're going to be level. I can install the cam housings and the oil return tubes. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen the heads from the top of the cylinders here, just so that it gives me a bit of wiggle room as far as moving the heads around so that the cam housings will fit. So, alright, great. So I've got my cam housings all cleaned up and ready to go, and I marked them before I took them off the engine. This is the left and this is the right, but there's an easy way to tell which is which, and to do that you just need to look at the actual camshafts themselves. This is the right side camshaft, and you can tell that because the lobes are very slightly offset on the right side, the peaks of the lobes, whereas on the left hand side the lobes are the peaks are very offset. They're 120 degrees, I think. So I know that this is the left side. You can also see that the journals are not even between the two. So if we line it up to the top of the cam housing, and we'll put our little finger in and feel for where that journal sits, you can see there's the back one and of course the one at the front. And then if you just feel around for the central one, I can feel that the actual bearing surface is here, so I know that this is the left side. So that's a good way to tell them apart. Just going to put some oil where the oil return tubes go. Slip in nicely in there, respective holes, and I'm installing this dry because I've got to measure the valve to piston clearance. There you go. Feel them slip in there. Okay, they look right. These look right. All right, great. There's 18 nuts holding this thing down. First of all, I'm going to add the 18 wave washers. I've got a rag in the oil return tube, so I don't want to lose any nuts down there. And there's 3 barrel nuts which fit in 3 locations where there's not enough room to get a regular wrench around the nut itself. So here, here and here. Let's go ahead and put those on. Okay, let's go ahead and start torquing these nuts down for the cam housing to the heads. And I'm going to do them in a certain order, and it's laid out in Wayne's book. So number 1 is this bad boy down here. I might set my torque wrench to 18.4 foot-pounds. And I've already given them a bit of torque, so okay, that's all done. Now the cam housing is all torqued down. Before I actually fit the cam inside to see if it runs freely, I need to tighten the head stud bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten all these down to 23.5 foot-pounds. Okay, that's them all done. Now let's check the cam, see if it fits in the cam housing and turns freely. I'm just going to add a little bit of motor oil to the journals. In there, and look at that. That feels perfect in there. Really nice the way that turns. So I feel good that it's torqued down evenly. There's no warpage in that carrier, the cam housing at all. It feels good. Not to nick any of the journals, but there it is in there. And again, that's nice, turns nice and freely there. So I'm happy with that as well. So the next step is to install the timing chain housings and all of their internals. I have everything I need laid out on my clean tray, all the parts, the gaskets, the O-rings, and the tools to do the job. The first step is to install the housings themselves, followed by the camshafts left and right. Once we have those done, we can do the rocker arms. After that, we'll install the sprockets and the tensioners on the chains. And once we have the sprockets installed, we can do the alignment and make sure I have the correct amount of shims. Once we have that, we can go for the cam timing. Get the cam timing set, I can go for the valve clearance. And the valve clearance is the most important measurement for me. I have a custom 911S piston, high compression, high dome piston, and these custom grinds on these camshafts. I need to make sure everything is within spec. Install the chain ramps with the short side facing in towards the engine. Okay, so before I install the camshaft in the cam housing, I just want to make sure that the woodruff key, this new woodruff key, fits in the slot in the end. And this one took a little bit of fettling. I got some 600 grit sandpaper and lubricated it with some water, and then just sanded the flat surfaces of the woodruff key. This is the other side, which I haven't done yet, but just to make sure that it actually fits nicely within that slot. I don't want any surprises when I actually go to install the cam and this sprocket that sits for the cam timing. I also just ran a bit of 1500 grit sandpaper to polish this end journal of the camshaft, and as well as just run it around the inside of the sprocket just to clean any burrs or anything up. It's been sitting a while, so I'll just go ahead and test fit it now. It just took just a little bit of polishing, and now I know that it's going to fit just perfectly, and it's a nice tight fit, so I don't have any surprises when I go to install this in the engine. Go install the thrust washer with the beveled edge towards the camshaft. And then the alignment shims, 3 came off this side. Now on this side there was only 3 when I took it apart, which I'm hoping is correct, but I think it might be incorrect. But that's where I'm going to start with my sprocket alignment measurement with 3 shims. Okay, so I finally got the woodruff key set squarely in its hole after a little bit of fettling, and now I'm just going to apply the sprocket into that slot, and it should want to go in all by itself. There you go. So I'm going to install the cam sprocket with the dish side facing out on the left. On the right it goes with the flat side facing out. So on the left I'm going to do it this way, and then I had problems installing it first and then installing the chain. It wouldn't fit around the inside of the housing, so I'm going to go ahead and install the sprocket onto the chain first and then put it in place. So that just takes that issue away. There's just not enough clearance on the inside here to wiggle the chain around onto the sprocket. So I'm gonna have to do it this way. Next is the large wave washer, and then the nut, and I'm gonna put this nut has a flatter surface, and I'll put that against the cam. Get the tools and tighten that down. Come on. 110. Jesus. So I'm setting up to take my sprocket alignment measurement, and what we were looking for is to get the where the chain sits on the intermediate shaft and the cam sprocket to be exactly at the same depth level, so that the chain is not stressed in any way running through the engine case. So to do that, I've got my 4-foot straight edge here, and I've set up a couple of tripods as helping hands, so I can rest the straight edge on top of the tripods, and it makes it easier for me to use you know, just one person here. So it's easier for me to take the measurements if I have a little bit of helping hands. I found that trying to keep the straight edge straight and not angle, I think this way is okay, but I was changing angle like this and moving it around, it was just swimming around, it was hard to take the measurement, I was getting inconsistent readings, so just having some these tripods helping me is great. So the first measurement I'm going to take is the depth of the intermediate shaft through this access hole on my engine, and I want to, with my caliper, I want to go in through this access hole, make sure the straight edge is firmly pushed against the engine, and I can feel the intermediate shaft there, and we're just going to push the caliper down until it reaches the straight edge. And I'm going to zero that out. So I'm going to go for that again and feel it hitting the intermediate shaft, and I got 0 again on that measurement. 0, 0. So I feel confident that I have the depth of the intermediate shaft zeroed out on my caliper. Now I can use this little tripod and wind up the straight edge, which is a lot of fun. So I get a sort of a thicker part of the engine to actually set my straight edge against, so I know it's really parallel with that engine case. And then with my caliper I can push the straight edge against the engine and then go for the sprocket here. So I'm looking for a close to 0 measurement here, so I'm going to push it against 3, 0. Same again. 0, 2, 7. So it's kind of 2, 6. 0, 2, 6 negative. Try this side. I'm getting a consistent reading through that on each side of the sprocket. So for the negative number, I need to move the sprocket closer to the front of the engine. So I'm going to be adding a shim on this side. Now I didn't buy these spare shims, but luckily if you look in your alternator, it's the same set of shims, and 4 shims came out of my alternator. So I can use one of these shims on this side and then reorder shims down the line. So let's put a shim on this side and measure the other side to see what that measurement is. So I'm setting up my straight edge to measure the left side of the cam, and I want to take the measurement from the very edge of the sprocket, this flat surface right here at the edge. I've got my straight edge pressed up against the engine, front of the engine, and resting on those tripods, and it's at a 90-degree angle to the front of the case. So let's go ahead. I'm looking for a measurement of 54.8. 54.89. Holding the straight edge against the engine block, front of the engine. 54.91. So I'm confident this side is within spec of that 0.25 millimeters plus or minus. So the left side needs no extra shims, but I'm going to put an extra shim on the right side to bring that up in within spec. So with 4 shims added, let's take a measurement. Oh, minus 0.70. It's gone way out of tolerance. I've gone the other way by a lot. 0.81. That doesn't seem to make any sense. If the shims are 2.5 millimeters, so I measure a shim. Oh, that shim is not 0.25. That shim is 0.5. So, so the shims are 0.5. I think that must be a typo in the book. 0.25. I think the shims are half a mil. Okay, so I need to remove a shim from this side now, and I think I can't remove 2 if they're 0.5, so I'm going to go with 3 on this side. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. The tolerance I had before was probably good enough. It's probably good enough.